Hello and welcome back to my channel. On this video, I'm going to be talking about all of the books that I hope to read in the month of January 2025. I want to start the year strong, and I only have one book from previous months that I'm bringing over into this new year, and I'm hoping to get it read this month. So if you have been following along for a while, you know in these videos I have a list of books that I pre-choose for the month of upcoming reading. I pull over any books from previous months that I haven't gotten to, and then I pick 5 random books using an alphabet letter that I randomly choose in the video to get some books from my Kindle backlist as well. Now, this year I am also adding in a special challenge to myself to be reading more books from these subscriptions that I have that are related to books and reading. So I do have an Everand subscription, I have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. Of course, I want to be reading more books from my library. I want to be reading more books from Audible Premium and various other sources. So you will see a smattering of books from a number of those different places throughout the year as I am engaging in those different subscriptions. But let's go ahead and dive in with the books I'm hoping to read this month. So the first book is the one that I'm pulling over from previous months, and that is Heavenly Bodies by Imani Aru. I am very excited that the audiobook for this comes out in January. I have pre-ordered it and I will be reading this book when I get access to the audio. It's about 600 pages. It is a fantasy novel and I have heard incredible things, and so I'm really looking forward to picking that up. I do have the second book in the series on ebook. I do not think it's available on audio yet, so if I really enjoy it, I may dive into the second book as well. All right, so other books I've added to my list for January. The first book is called Disappearing Earth by Julia Phillips. This is a book that's been on my TBR for a very long time. It is about a couple of sisters who go missing in Russia. And as soon as I heard about this book, I was very intrigued by it, and I just haven't gotten to it yet. So I'm very interested in picking this up. I also added to my list A.S. Byatt's The Children's Book. This is another kind of chunky literary fiction novel. A.S. Byatt is maybe most well known for Possession, which was made into a film. I loved Possession as a novel. I enjoyed the movie as well, but the novel is amazing. And I've always wanted to read more of this author, and the children's book is kind of it focuses on a protagonist who is a children's book author and kind of follows along like the people around her, and I think like the familial relationships and the other relationships that she has. I don't know much other than that, but I'm looking forward to picking that up in January as well. I have also added to my list for the entire year a book called Daily Creative by Todd Henry. And this is a book that has every individual day has different essays that you can read about creativity. And because it's kind of one of those 365, daily essay books, I'm going to try to be reading that throughout the entire year of 2025, but I'm going to launch into that in January. The next book on my list is one called Where the Bodies Were Buried, Whitey Bulger and the World That Made Him by T.J. English. Now, this is a book that I kind of turned to and was interested in because I did live in Boston for a period of time, about 5 years. And this was a person who was very much like in the news and on people's radars. He is basically a mob boss from the Boston area who was eventually arrested and imprisoned. And I believe was actually killed while he was in prison. And I just don't know much about the history of kind of his relationships, his crimes, and kind of how that all went down in the Boston area. And I'm guessing other places as well. And so I thought this might be an interesting one to pick up. Also on my list is a book called 1,000 Heartbeats by Kira Cass. And this is a book that I picked up because I had read this author's other series called The Selection, and it was super fun. It was kind of like a bachelorette, or a bachelor reality TV show, but like a YA kind of twist. And I really enjoyed it. And so when I saw that she had this standalone, I decided to pick it up and kind of see what I thought. This is an enemies to lovers, where there's a princess who has lived a life of comfort, and it says that she's going to be forced into a loveless marriage for political gain. And then there is a man who has devoted his life to the army, and he's hoping to one day help them reclaim a throne that was stolen from them. The idea of love is merely a distraction. But then I think he gets somehow embroiled with this princess. His name is Lennox. So interested to pick that up and kind of see what I think based on the other series I read by this author that I enjoyed. The next book I have on my list is a book called Solitude by Robert Kull. I don't think I've read this author before, but I do love books on solitude. And this one is subtitled Seeking Wisdom in Extremes, a Year Alone in the Patagonia Wilderness. And I am always interested in kind of memoirs that are kind of like wilderness memoirs or nature memoirs. And that kind of crossover with the solitude piece as well is really interesting to me. So looking forward to picking that up. I also have on my list the second book in the Green Oak series by Elena Armas called The Fiancé Dilemma. I read the first book in this series, which I cannot remember what it is called. It is called The Long Game. I have also read other books that she has written in another series that is called Love Deception. And I enjoyed those. And so I wanted to get to her most recent novel. So I don't even know what this is about. Let me do a quick read. It says, Josie has given the opposite sex and love plenty of chances, 4 exactly if you count all of her failed engagements, and 5 if you include the absentee father who kept her existence a secret until very recently. So when her father decides to announce his retirement with a splashy magazine piece about the family, she realizes her romantic history is a complicated PR issue. And then it says, Matthew Flanagan is in the mud. Literally, not only has he been fired from his job, but also the tires of his car are stuck in the muck after taking a wrong turn as he enters Green Oak, North Carolina. So he grabs a duffel and his essentials and goes in search of a place to crash until he gets his life back on track. But instead, he finds his best friend's sister, Josie, greeting him as her fiancé. What starts as a big misunderstanding quickly turns into an arrangement, with him playing the new role as a doting fiancé for this PR piece for the father. So looking forward to picking that up. I also have on my list the first book in a series called Dirty Air by Lauren Asher. The book is called Throttled. And this is a series that I have heard good things about. I think it is set in Formula One. So of all the sports themed subgenres I have engaged with around romance, I have not done Formula One yet. So I thought I would pick that up and see what I think there. I also decided to pick up the first book in another series by Devney Perry. I continue to work through her backlist. This is the Jameson Valley series. And the first book is called The Coppersmith Farmhouse. Devney Perry writes a lot of small town kind of romance, sometimes romance suspense fiction, and she does it very, very well. So I'm assuming that this is no different. It looks like there is a farmhouse in a small town, Montana environment. And there's a woman who goes to this farmhouse to kind of escape her big city loneliness and is connected with the town sheriff. So pretty common fare for what you can expect from Devney Perry, but looking forward to picking that up. The next book I have on my list is called The Last Hunt by Audrey Cole. This is the second book in the Final Hunt series. The first book I read, I think a couple years back, and it's basically about this woman who finds out that her husband is a serial killer and that when he dies, basically, and she uncovers this. But then there's this question of, is he really dead? And in this second book in the series, I think you think that he's dead based on the conclusion from book 1, but I think there's this question about that too in book 2. So I'm kind of interested to pick that up. The next book on my list is called Now It All Makes Sense, subtitled How an ADHD Diagnosis Brought Clarity to My Life by Alex Partridge. And this book is actually a NetGalley ARC. It is an advanced reader's copy from NetGalley. And if you are unfamiliar with NetGalley, it is basically a place where you can get advanced reader's copies and then offer reviews. And one of the subscription services that I have, which is free, by the way, but I don't utilize as much as I want, is NetGalley. So I'm going to try to read a book from NetGalley every month and offer a review. And this is the one that I chose for January. So I'm looking forward to diving into that. I also have on my list Super Better by Jane McGonigal. I have read several books by Jane McGonigal and really enjoyed them. This one is about the science of games and gamification around things like routines and resiliency. Totally up my alley, the things that I always enjoy reading about. So looking forward to diving into that as well. I have also added the trilogy by Margaret Atwood, the Mad Adam trilogy. This is made up of 3 books. I think it's Oryx and Crake, The Year of the Flood, and then Mad Adam. And this is a trilogy I think that's kind of dark. I think it's about a plague. I think it's also about kind of environmental sustainability and like genetics and like various things that maybe, I don't know, too dark for a dark January. We'll see in the dead of winter if this is the right choice that I have made. But I wanted to read more of Margaret Atwood. I think she's just brilliant. And I have a ton of her backlist that I just never have gotten to. So decided to add this to my list. I have also added the first 3 books in the Sutter Lake series by Catherine Cowles. If you've been watching for a while, you know that I have been going through the backlist of Catherine Cowles, and I happen to have a box set on audio of the first 3 books in this series, which include Beautiful Broken Pieces, Beautifully Broken Life, and Beautifully Broken Spirit. And so I thought I would just binge all 3 in a row and see what I think of this particular series. Okay, a few more of my predetermined books. One of them is HBR at 100. This is the most influential and innovative articles from Harvard Business Review's First Century, published by Harvard Business Review. I tend to enjoy the collections that Harvard Business Review puts out, and I happen to have this on audio from Audible Premium. So it's included in my subscription and I wanted to listen to it. I'm also going to get a hard copy from my library so that I can be kind of like reading it as I'm listening. But I'm looking forward to this one as well. And then I'm also putting a couple of rereads on my list for January. The first one is called All the Light We Cannot See by Anthony Doerr. I read this for the first time years ago. Then I tried to read it again last spring, and I happened to have the flu when I was reading it. And I read it, but I was not really taking it in as much as I might want. So I want to read this again because I want to watch the adaptation of this into a television show. And I don't want to do that until I've like read this and it's fresh kind of on my mind. So I'm looking forward to picking that up again. I do have it on audio. This will be technically the 3rd time I've read it, but I feel like the last time it didn't really sink in. And then the last book I have on my predetermined list is called The Prison Healer by Lynette Noni. I did read this first book in a trilogy a while back, but I want to get to the book 2 and 3 of the trilogy. And whenever I do that, I'd like to read the first book fresh so that I'm remembering all the details and the characters before I dive into the other books in the trilogy or the series. So I'm going to pick this one up again. I really loved it the first time I read it through. I have it on ebook, I have it on audio, so I'm looking forward to picking that up as well. Okay, so those are the ton of books that I'm hoping to get to in January 2025. And now I'm going to go ahead and open up my Kindle and navigate to my library area, and then I'm going to organize it by alphabetical so that I can start to look at what I might pick for my January reads. All right, so I've sorted my list by alphabet, and now I have to pick my letter. So the random letter that I am picking for this month is, ooh, this is gonna be a hard one. I'm gonna try this and we'll see how it goes, but I'm gonna pick a backup letter just in case. It's Z, and I don't know how much I have in the Z realm. So let me pick a backup letter. All right, my backup letter is M. So let me see what I've got in the Z category, and if I need to go into M, I can. I'm just not sure I have very much in Z. I have one book in Z, and I'm willing to put it on my list. It is called Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. Of course, this is a book that I have wanted to read for quite some time and have never gotten to. This is by Robert Pirsig. The subtitle is An Inquiry into Values. I'm pretty sure this is like a philosophy book from what I understand. I think it has kind of some metaphor and, you know, like bigger kind of themes happening in it. But okay, I'll add that Z book to my list. And then let me navigate to the M's and see what I might have here that I can round out with as well. And I'm just gonna take a quick glance through and see if there's anything that like immediately stands out to me as something that might be a good fit. All right, so the first book that I'm gonna pick is called Master of Change, How to Excel When Everything is Changing Around You. And this is by Brad Stulberg. I think I read a Brad Stulberg book last year and I really enjoyed it. And I am very interested in the concept of change and particularly how it relates to things like career and professional life. So I'm gonna go ahead and add that to my list for January. I am also going to add Matrix by Lauren Groff. I believe this takes place in a nunnery. Could that be right? Am I remembering that correctly? Or a monastery? Let's see. It is in an abbey. Okay, so this is about a woman who, what is the time period for this? It says she's cast out of the royal court by Eleanor of Aquitaine, and then she goes to an abbey, and its nuns are on the brink of starvation and beset by disease. She's taken aback by the severity of her new life, but she finds focus and love in collective life with her singular and mercurial sisters. She steadily supplants her desire for family, for her homeland, and for the passions of her youth with something new to her, devotion to the abbey. And let's see. It says, in a world that is shifting and corroding in frightening ways, one that can never reconcile itself with her existence, will the sheer force of her vision be bulwark enough? So I've just heard incredible things about this. So I'm going to go ahead and pick this one up as well. All right, the next book I'm going to pick up is called Money Zen. This is by Manisha Thakur, and the subtitle is The Secret to Finding Your Enough. I am always a sucker for books on finance and kind of like culture and finance, and I think this one falls into that category. So I'm going to go ahead and add this to my list as well. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of a risk with one that I'm not sure I will want to finish it, but I'm going to put it on my list and see what I think. This is a book called Manacled. It is fanfic. It is Hermione fanfic from Harry Potter. If you are familiar with any fanfic, it is basically Draco and Hermione fanfic. What I have heard is that it's very engaging. It's very long. I think this is probably 800 to 900 pages long. And if you are familiar with the fanfic world, basically these are things that are posted online, but they cannot be sold and they cannot be printed and they cannot have kind of financial transactions tied to them because they are fanfic and they're using someone else's story, characters, and bringing them into, you know, this fan fiction. The thing that I've heard about Manacled, other than the fact that it's very good, is that there are a lot of trigger warnings for this particular book. And so I'm going to give myself permission to start it and see what I think, but to step away from it if it gets really intense. My understanding, and you can always look this up, you know, in terms of the deeper trigger warnings for this book, is that it does basically cover a plot in which Harry Potter, like the ending of Harry Potter is very different. I think Harry Potter has died, and so the Dark Lord basically has won, and Hermione, it basically becomes like a slave of the part of the story of like Draco is now in a leadership role and she becomes kind of a slave. So I'm interested to kind of see what this is like. I have never read a Hermione fanfic before. I have never read Harry Potter fanfic before. And so I'm curious. So I'm going to pick this one up, but I'm also going to give myself a little bit of grace to see kind of what that might look like. Okay, so I think that is giving me all of the books that I need. I have a Z book because it's the only Z book I have in my list. And then I have 4 M books that I have also added to my list. And let me make sure that's true. Yes. Okay. So those are all the books I'm hoping to read in January 2025. Of course, I would love to hear what you're reading this month. You can always drop a comment below the video and make sure to check back at the end of this month to see what I was actually able to finish and read in these 31 days. Thanks so much for watching and happy reading.